Alright, folks, so you guys know who ContraPoints is. She is a very, very popular YouTuber. And I did a video a couple days ago. I want to say it was just 2 days ago, maybe three max. But just a couple of days ago, I did a video talking about ContraPoints actually sending out this thread where she basically airs out her thoughts on an issue, and she got a ton of backlash for that thread from non-binary people. And apparently it seems to be the case that yesterday she sent out another one of those threads that aired her thoughts on it, and it got a lot of non-binary people really angry again, and so there was more backlash. And now ContraPoints has deactivated her Twitter account completely. Now, I think she's deactivated her Twitter in the past, although I'm not 100% sure, so someone in the comments definitely correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe she has deactivated her own Twitter account in the past. This isn't something that's like uncharted or unprecedented, but she really did get a lot of backlash, folks, and some really sort of strong, aggressive backlash. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to remind you of the thread that I did a video on a couple days ago by reading you the thread. Then I'm going to read you her most recent thread that caused even more backlash. Then I'm going to go through tweets that are a mix of people who are supportive of her post-deactivation, people who are very critical of her thread on that she explained to, or people who are mad about her, basically the way that she's treating or talking about non-binary issues and people. And that is what I'm going to do for you guys, just to show you guys all the stuff that's going on. So we got a lot to get through, so bear with me here. So the very first thread that she sent out that really got a lot of backlash, right? Someone said, sometimes it's funny when you're the only trans person in a space where everyone's announcing their pronouns, like it gets to you and a hush falls over the room, and then it goes on. And Natalie responded to this by saying, this has happened to me before in hyper-woke spaces. Like it's me and a bunch of cis women, and we all have to go in a circle saying she/her because I'm there. There's this paradox where I can go to a sports bar in North Carolina and be miss/ma'amed all night, no question. But in self-consciously trans-inclusive spaces, I have to explain my pronouns and watch woke people awkwardly correct themselves every time they say, you guys. And then she says, I guess it's good for people who use they/them only and want only gender-neutral language, but it comes at the minor expense of semi-passable transes like me, and that's super hard for us. So this sounded a little, I don't know if this was sarcasm. It seems to be sarcasm, her comment about saying how it's super hard, but a lot of people took issue with this comment from her by basically saying, oh, you're throwing non-binary people under the bus, you're basically putting them at the expense of like what is a sort of, I think we can all agree, a fairly sort of trivial trouble to go through, right? So that's the way that people had felt about this. And also, they see Contra as someone who's like kind of being, this is people's perception, is that she's being privileged. That was what the people who were against her were saying, that she's privileged because she's a passable trans, is what she says. And so people are saying that she's basically giving priority to people who are, quote, semi-passable trans, and people are not happy about that. Now, the most recent thread that she had sent out just yesterday that really got people riled up here. This one says, I'm friends with a lot of Gen Z trans people, and I'm often grouped in with them because I'm very online and I transitioned not that long ago, but my experience is very different. I'm not a Vanguard Zoomer tran. I sometimes feel like the last of the old school transsexuals. And it goes on saying, but now you go into these leftist Discord/Facebook groups, and like 20 to 30% identify some flavor of trans. Most of them are not conventional binary transsexuals. That seems to be the future. And she says, but I also understand why a lot of trans people who just want to blend in are frustrated with new visibility and with the radicals. I'm feeling fearful myself about the future of trans acceptance. I understand the desire to be invisible, tolerated, and safe. So this got people really riled up. People who, the non-binary community especially really got riled up with this. They were not happy about this tweet thread from Contra herself. And so, because I guess for them it's like, oh, she's trying to say she's an old vanguard and that there's this new sort of group of people coming in. And so to look at some of these responses to what went down, someone says, so at ContraPoints deleted her Twitter, not because of the usual D-heads on the right, but because the left is full of judgmental holes that don't give an ish about coalition building. Another one says, now that trans Twitter has finally defeated ContraPoints, maybe they'll finally have time to turn that attention towards people actually trying to get them, like Ben Shapiro and Crowder. The Surf say, if it wasn't for ContraPoints, a lot of cisheads, including ourselves, wouldn't know half of what we do about trans issues or gender theory. Another one says, ContraPoints, this specific experience I have as a trans person makes me uncomfortable. You clowns. Wow, I can't believe you didn't validate literally all the trans experiences to ever exist and instead only focused on your own experience for 3 seconds. So, these so far we're looking at are all would seem to be post. So this one is not post. But the other ones are post-deletion of her Twitter account, which, by the way, she can reactivate it just by logging in, is my understanding of the way Twitter deactivation works. And people do deactivate their account from time to time. Certain people do. So, those ones I just read to you, except for this one, are post-deletion. And they're basically saying, like, hey, they're basically trying to say, oh, even if you disagree with her, she's done so much for the trans community that it's stupid to, like, dogpile her and go after her, essentially. Now, this one is one that is very... So when I said there was some really, like, sort of aggressive, pissed off sort of disagreement, backlash, here's what it is. So someone says, FYI, I'm actually one of those old school transsexuals. I transitioned over 20 years ago and have spent over half my life out, the entirety of my adult life. I may not always understand non-binary people, but they aren't the ones making it hard to be trans. And she goes on this very long-winded rant going off. So when I tell you, like, there's stuff like this, and this one actually isn't even isn't the aggressive one that I was talking about. That one will come later, sorry. This one is just one sort of breaking it down, her opinion, obviously. Basically invalidating the claim that is made by Contra, where Contra said that she's sort of the old vanguard, where this person, Crystal, is disagreeing with her take on that. There's another one that's really harsh. This one says, ContraPoints brought an entire school of gender theory and philosophical thought to the eyes of a highly uneducated and reactionary public, and she made them more accepting of trans people and non-binary people and GNC people in general. Her contributions are so vast, they're immeasurable. So again, there's more of this. There were a good amount of tweets of people who are basically post-deletion saying, oh, this is not how she should be treated, etc., etc. This one does the same. It says, I've been saying it for ages. We need to be mindful about the vicious elements of the left community. There's a subset of grief mongers who go after anyone who doesn't toe the line of a certain respectability optic, and it needs to stop. Solidarity with hashtag ContraPoints. Another one says, I've been transitioning for as long as ContraPoints, so how she thinks she's old school is beyond me. Oh, except old school could just be code for privileged and so insecure about needing to pass solely for the benefit of those who hate us, I guess. So this seems to be the opinion of people who are in disagreement with her. People who seem to basically be saying, like, oh, she's basically throwing non-binary people under the bus in favor of people who she deems to be passable transes like herself. So that's kind of the belief that's going on. Another one says, I really wish ContraPoints would stop throwing people who don't pass under the bus. This was from September 2nd, by the way. This is actually 3 days ago. This was post that original thread that she did that got a lot of backlash that I did a video on a couple days ago. The first thread that I just read to you in the beginning of the video, this was post that. And this is also one where it was sort of very aggressive. This one says, hello, ContraPoints. From one passing trans woman to another, I think you should sit the blank down and also shut the blank up about non-binary people. It is not our place as binary trans people to police those who do not fit into the binary. Shut up. So, this is just like, is this really the way that you want to go? Is this really the route that you want to go about something like this? I mean, I just find it to be a little bit crazy. So this is another one that was also post the original thread. This one says, 1 year ago, yeah, ContraPoints inspires me a lot as a trans woman. Now I use they/them pronouns to spite Natalie Wynn. That's pretty crazy. So there seems to be this divide, but stuff like this, and there was a good amount of this kind of stuff in response to her first thread. I'm sorry, like, I think that her, comments probably are not the best, and I think that they could be better. But I just simply don't think that this kind of stuff is really a good idea. Like tweets like these where you kind of spam it to someone. And it's hard for people to take the kind of pressure and the level of pressure and the severity of the pressure and the significance of the pressure that comes from being a sort of public figure and just that kind, especially to that level. And it's hard. Like, you'll never understand it unless you're somebody in that position. So if you're in ContraPoints' position, you'd understand just like wow, like when you see all of that kind of stuff, especially because she's gone through the experience of being trans as well, which is in and of itself incredibly difficult. But I also think that, yeah, I could see how she seems to be throwing non-binary people under the bus as well. So while I think that there are some sort of problems with her comments, I would agree with that. But is it really a good idea to drive her off of Twitter? Now, you could also ask the question of, was she overreacting and deactivating her Twitter? That I don't really know. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, again, like, a lot of pressure is tough to handle. And so I can understand someone doing that. And with vitriol like this coming your way, I mean, and there were a bunch of other tweets like this. And her thread is deleted now, so I don't have those responses to show you. But I showed you guys some of them in my previous video, actually. Like, a lot of them were like, F you, or, sit the blank down, or whatever it is, stuff like that. Like, oh, your ish take, and all this other kind of stuff, okay? So, basically, I would say, I don't think her comments are the best. I think she does seem to be kind of throwing non-binary people under the bus. But I also don't think that this is a productive way to do this. And I think this is a pretty sort of scorched earth way of doing this, to be honest, and just kind of just a bad idea. Bad idea is what I think. But let me know your thoughts on this down below. Very curious to hear them.